Welcome back to Flag Football Fridays. This is week 8, and actually the final week of our series. I hope this has been an informative and helpful series for you, as we've started from the very basics and moved on to some more advanced concepts. This series has been brought to you by the University of Texas at Arlington Intramural Sports, and I'm Matt Holmquist, the coordinator for sport programs here at UTA Campus Recreation. If this is the first video you're watching, I encourage you to start from the beginning. We've covered a lot of ground so far, so it'll be most helpful for you to review those other topics first. Week 4, we talked about fouls, penalties, and down situations, and that leads right into penalty enforcement and spots, which we started covering last week and will conclude this week. To quickly review, a foul can be live ball, dead ball, or simultaneous with the snap, and for each foul, we have a penalty, and for each penalty, we must enforce that penalty. With penalty enforcement, we start with the type of play, find the basic spot for that type of play, and then we determine the enforcement spot. Remember, there are special enforcements, but we will not be covering that in our series. For a quick review of the spots on the field, include the previous spot where the ball was last snapped, the succeeding spot where the ball would next be snapped if a foul had not occurred, the end of the run where the ball either becomes dead or a player loses possession, the spot of a foul, where the foul occurs, which could be anywhere on the field, and then the basic spot, which is not always the spot of enforcement, but merely a point of reference to help us determine the enforcement spot. The enforcement spot is already prescribed for dead ball fouls and fouls simultaneous with the snap, but for live ball fouls, we need to determine the enforcement spot using the all but one principle. Our process begins with determining the type of play, finding the basic spot, and then finding the enforcement spot. Our types of plays include a loose ball play and a running play. The running play quite a bit last week, so let's cover the loose ball play this week. A loose ball play could be a punt, a legal forward pass, a backward pass, illegal kick, or fumble by Team A behind their line of scrimmage, or any runs that precede the first 3 types of plays. If a foul occurs during any of these segments, we say that it occurs during a loose ball play. We'll talk a little bit more about runs that precede a loose ball and how that means that this foul occurred during a loose ball play. A timeline is extremely helpful when determining where to enforce penalties. We know that every play has a snap and an end of the play. If anything happens between the end of the play and the next snap, it's a dead ball foul and will be enforced from the succeeding spot. We also know that fouls that occur simultaneously with the snap are always enforced from the previous spot. For live ball fouls, we must go through our process, so let's do that now with a couple examples. We're going to determine the type of play. This is often the hardest part. So let's start with an easy example. Every play after the snap has a run. Any foul that occurs during this run occurs during a running play. Let's say the flags are then pulled and we have the end of the play. Any foul that occurs during this down occurred during a run play. So we found our type of play, and now we need to find the basic spot for that type of play. So our basic spot for a running play, again, just the reference point, not necessarily where we will be enforcing the foul, but our reference point is the end of the run. Let's talk about how to determine the type of play if we have a forward pass. We've had a run play up to this point, but then a forward pass is thrown. The play now becomes a loose ball play. As soon as that forward pass is released, it's a loose ball segment. Earlier, we went through the definition of a loose ball play, being a forward pass, a punt, or number 3 had a number of different things, but then our point 4 said that any run that precedes any of those things also is part of a loose ball play. So because we have a forward pass, the run before it turns into a loose ball segment. Practically, any penalties that occur before the pass or after the pass are enforced as loose ball penalties. So now that we've determined what type of play we have, a loose ball play, we need to determine the basic spot. Again, just the reference point, not necessarily the enforcement spot. The basic spot for a loose ball play is the previous spot. One foul that has a specified enforcement and doesn't use the all but one principle is roughing the passer. You can't really use different rules to come up with the enforcement for this one, you just have to memorize it. Roughing the passer is what we call a tack-on foul and enforced from the dead ball spot if it's beyond the neutral zone. So if Team A finishes that down and their last run ended beyond the neutral zone, we're going to tack it on. If it doesn't end beyond the neutral zone, or if B ends up with the ball, it's going to be enforced from the previous spot. Again, this is one of those penalties you just have to memorize. So let's go back to our forward pass play. We've had a loose ball. We could have an incomplete pass that ends the down, and any foul that occurs during that down will have occurred during a loose ball play. And our basic spot is going to be the previous spot. Not the enforcement spot, just the basic spot. Or we can have a catch after that loose ball play, and then after, what's going to happen? There's going to be a run. So the flags are pulled and we have the end of the play. Let's take a look at our different segments. The first segment was a run, and then the second segment was a loose ball. Any run that occurs before a loose ball segment now becomes part of that loose ball play. So we saw how that happened. Then we had a catch and a run. Now we have two different segments on the play. If it occurred during the loose ball segment, the basic spot would be the previous spot. If the foul occurred during the run, the basic spot for that foul would be the end of the run. So it really matters when the foul occurs as to where we enforce it. Remember, again, the basic spot is not the enforcement spot, simply a reference point based on when the foul occurs. For example, look at this yellow X. What type of play did this foul occur during? There are different segments in this play, and so since this happened during the run, we say this happened during a running play. Step 2 is we determine the basic spot. This occurred during a running play, and the basic spot is the end of the run. What's step 3? Well, we're going to determine our enforcement spot. And to do that, we're going to go to the all but one principle. To review, the following timelines are probably the most common of what you'll see on the field. A snap and a run in the end of the play, a loose ball where we have a forward pass that's incomplete, and then a forward pass that's caught, and then there's a run afterwards, and then the flag is pulled or the runner runs out of bounds. We use these different types of play segments to determine when the foul happens, then determine the type of play, the basic spot, and then our enforcement spot. So we broke it all down, let's put it all back together. Last week we talked about the different spots we have on the field, the whole process of enforcement, and how to determine the basic spot for each type of play. This week we looked more about how to determine the type of play that a foul occurs during. So let's put it all back together. Step 1 in penalty enforcement is determining the type of play. Did it occur during a loose ball play, or did it occur during a running play? Once we determine what type of play it occurred during, we can find the basic spot. And the basic spot for a loose ball play, our reference point, is always the previous spot. And the basic spot for the running play is always the end of the run. Now that we've found our reference points, let's figure out where can we enforce this penalty. The all but one principle says all fouls are enforced from the basic spot, except for fouls by the offense behind the basic spot. If we determine that the offense fouled and the foul was behind the basic spot, depending on what play it was, then we will enforce that foul from the spot of the foul. Here's a high-level view of determining our enforcement spot. Factors include when the foul occurred, who fouled, the spot of the foul, and then the enforcement spot based on those factors. Remember that dead ball fouls by either team are always enforced from the succeeding spot, and fouls simultaneous with the snap, such as false start, illegal shift, or illegal motion, are enforced from the previous spot. Live ball fouls fall under our all but one principle. All of the fouls are enforced from the basic spot except for fouls by the offense behind the basic spot. This exception right here is why the basic spot is merely a reference point. All the other fouls are enforced from the basic spot. However, if we determine that it occurred during a certain type of play, and then the foul occurred behind the basic spot for that certain type of play, we're going to enforce it from the spot of the foul. Let's look at a few on-field examples. In this play, the offense is going to take the snap and run the ball downfield. During that run, we have illegal contact by the offense. Step 1, we're going to determine the type of play. When did it happen? It happened during a running play. For a running play, what is our basic spot? The end of the run. Now let's go to our all but one principle to put it all together. All but one says all of our fouls are enforced from the basic spot, except for fouls by the offense behind the basic spot. This foul did not occur behind the basic spot, it occurred ahead of it. Therefore, we can't use the exception, so we're going to enforce from the basic spot. Our enforcement spot is the end of the run. Here's another example. The offense is going to take the snap, run the ball downfield, and then flag guard. Our foul is flag guarding by the offense, and this occurred during a running play. Our reference point, or basic spot for the running play, is the end of the run. Now let's look at our all but one principle for enforcement. Did this foul occur by the offense? Yep. Did it occur behind the basic spot? Yes. So it falls under our exception. Therefore, our enforcement spot is going to be the spot of the foul. I think we've got running plays down pat. Let's look at pass plays. The quarterback takes the ball and passes it to the wide receiver. The wide receiver then takes the ball and runs it downfield. During that run, we have flag guarding on the offense. So, when did this happen? Well, we did have a pass, but then we also had a run. So we need to be sure when this contact happened. Flag guarding can only really happen when you have the ball. So this occurred during the related run. Our basic spot for running play is the end of the run. By now, this should be pretty easy, right? All fouls are enforced from the basic spot, except for if it's by the offense behind the basic spot. It is the offense and it is behind the basic spot, so we're going to enforce from the spot of the foul. This play example highlights the importance of knowing when the foul occurs. The quarterback will take the ball and roll out. During his run, we have illegal contact. So far, this occurs during a running play. However, the quarterback then passes the ball. What did we learn about this? Well, any run that precedes a subsequent loose ball then becomes part of a loose ball play. So even though this foul occurred during a run, technically, for penalty enforcement purposes, it occurred during a loose ball play. Illegal contact by the offense occurred during a loose ball play. Now that we've determined the type of play, we need to determine the basic spot for that type of play. For a loose ball play, the basic spot is the previous spot. Our all but one principle says that we're going to enforce everything from the basic spot unless the offense fouls behind the basic spot. The basic spot is our previous spot, that dashed line, the line of scrimmage, and we see that the foul occurs ahead of it. So our exception does not apply here, and we can enforce from the basic spot. Therefore, our enforcement spot is the previous spot. For our final example, the quarterback is going to take the snap and roll out to the side, and their teammate is going to commit illegal contact. This occurred during a running play, right? Well, the quarterback's now going to pass the ball. What do we know about this? As soon as there's a forward pass, anything that came before it becomes part of that loose ball play. So we have illegal contact by the offense, and we know that our type of play is a loose ball play. Our basic spot for a loose ball play is always the previous spot. So let's go to our all but one principle to determine if we're going to use that or not. This foul is by the offense, and it is behind the basic spot. Our previous spot right here is the line of scrimmage, which is the dotted line, and our foul occurs behind it. Therefore, we're going to use this exception, and our enforcement spot is going to be the spot of the foul. And with that, we've concluded the last video of our series. Like I said, I hope this has been an informative and beneficial journey for you. If you're an official, I hope this series gave you a clear-cut understanding of the basics so that you can continue to learn the more advanced concepts. If you're a player or fan of flag football, I hope that we've been able to help you understand the elements of the game that you love to play or watch. If you're on a university campus, I'd encourage you to reach out to your campus recreation professional with any questions that you have so they can help you along your journey. But if you have any other questions, please feel free to reach out to us at imsports@uta.edu.